All right, quiet on the shit, everyone. Quiet on the shit. Quiet on the shit.
Hello, and welcome back to our channel. Okay, last week we did magic, and this week we're going to be talking about Griffondale.
All right. So what are we doing here?
You're hosting.
I'm hosting. When did that happen? No, you guys are supposed to be asking me questions.
Okay, Jay, so where is Griffondale, and what is Griffondale?
Griffondale is on. It's a place. It's a city. It's like a town. It's a town place. It's a town place. Specifically, it's a place that is also a town and a city, and it is on Ronza.
Town city.
It's a town city. It's a city place.
How does that? You can't be a city and a town.
Is it the capital of Astalia?
Yeah. Oh,
Is it a town?
it's the capital of Astalia.
What's Stalia?
Astalia is in Ronza. It's in Scarlasia. Okay, Ronza's a continent. Okay, wait. Ronza's a continent.
Testing you,
All right, so the universe, and then you got the planets, and then you got Synestria, and then there's a continent called Ronza, and then on that continent there's a nation, and that nation is called Scarlasia, and then in that nation there's a state called Astalia, and then in that state there is a mountain range called the Bloom Spires, and then in the Bloom Spires at the tippy top bottom part of it, there's a
Bottom part of
yeah, you know, it's like it's fluid in the bedroom, you know. It can do both
Like I
ways.
said, you can't be a top without a bottom. So.
I mean, it's debatable.
No, I mean, there can't be no bottom. There's no top. There's no way to...
How are we supposed to know where we are if you can't even explain?
Griffondale is the capital of Astalia, and we're in purgatory. Next question.
Okay, so Griffondale is the capital of Astalia, and we're in Astalia, which is in Scarlasia, which is on the continent Ronza, which is in Synestria.
On Synestria, technically.
On Synestria, not in. Very specific. I mean, the only other question I have for you, I guess, is what does this place look like?
That's the only other question you have for me? We just started.
I have a question.
Oh, he has questions. All right. What does it look like? It looks like a city. It's got layers, like an onion, but more like a cake. So there's a river that runs through the middle. And then on top of the river, you got layers. And then there's like 3 layers that are bad layers. And then you got the good layer up top, where all of the good people live. And then all the bad people live in the bad place.
What are the layers' names?
Jim, Bob, Steve, Franklin, and Marco. So the bottom parts are the Undercity, and it's basically these like different patchwork wooden platforms and stuff that are where like the docks are located and all this stuff, and where the slums kind of are. And there's 3 layers of those, which I don't want to get into right now. And then the top of that is the Duke's what do we call it? The Duke's Quarter, and it's a big, you know, flat sort of plain above the river. And it's where all the like rich, nice people live who like aren't shooting each other and being super racist. And so like the Undercity is 1 quarter, the Duke's Quarter is another quarter, go figure. And then there's 2 mountains on either side flanking the city. And each of those, called the Western and Eastern Fell respectively, are the domains of 2 real naughty bad boy families who do bad stuff. But are actually just like totally good people, and everyone should just be super nice to them and not worry about what's in their basements.
There's nothing in the basement.
What's in the basement, Emily?
There's nothing.
What's in the goddamn basement, Emily?
There's nothing in the
What's in the basement?
There's so many basements and so many medias, different things. I don't know. Basements are always like a kooky thing, but I don't know.
Kooky Basement is the name of my garage band.
It's actually there actually is a band called The Basements, so that's funny. They're actually pretty good. I like them. What is like the economy kind of like? Like what are like big? Are they big into trading? Are there are they like what are they known for economically wise?
Ships, mostly. They're a river city, so they build a lot of ships and send them out of the warehouses in the Undercity. They also do have a fairly impressive amount of sort of magitech. I wouldn't call them factories at this point because we're dealing with the Elizabethan age, so we don't really have full-on smokestacks and like child workers. But
If you're dealing with Elizabethan, then yes, we do have factories, but no, we do not have functioning unions yet. And child workers are definitely a thing.
that's fair. But essentially, they are more just like capable inventors who are doing interesting things with magitech and stuff like that and trying out new stuff. As far as like the main exports go, I'd say there's a lot of stone and right, it's called Griffondale. Yeah, there are griffins. Really? Lots of griffins.
Whoa.
And there's a lot of people who raise the griffins, and the griffins get bought mostly by the military and used as mounts, and they're horrifying because they're like tiny dragons with lion bodies.
That leads me to my second question then. Well, where's the Dale? Like, is that a big import of theirs?
Yeah, so a dale is basically, it's like a hill, like a nice grassy knoll.
So they export
And so,
dales.
well, no, there's just a lot of, it's on a, it's in a valley. There's two mountains on either side, but it's called Griffondale because it essentially makes like a dome sort of shape in the landscape. It's all kind of flat. It's meant to be like a stupid wordplay thing. I like puns.
So you mentioned those mountains earlier, and you mentioned there were some really nice people that lived on them, and those sound kind of important. So who are those people?
Oh,
Am I friends with them?
they're your good friends. They're everyone's good friends. They're your good friends, or you're not you anymore. Basically, there are a Stiltsguardian family and an Amerian family, respectively. E is for East, which is also for Ameria. It tells you which fell they live on.
Yeah, they live on the East Fell.
She made me forget it a lot, so then I had to remember it. But basically, the Amerian family that owns it, they're super nice people who make a lot of clothes and run a nice little bathhouse that everyone likes to visit. And then the Stiltsguardian family owns a nice little bank and a cool little completely consensual and fun gladiatorial arena. So, normal stuff. Good people.
So, let's say that I'm in this world as a tourist, right? And I'm going to Gryffindor for the first time.
That's a bad place to tour, friend.
Yeah. Well, what are some spots that I could visit? What are some places that it's known for? And on top of that, you don't have to go into super detail because but what are some big laws that might be different? What are some do's and don'ts in the city? Is there anything that generally be like, oh, can't walk with your thumb sticking out or they're gonna arrest you? I don't know, but anything like that?
Well, magic sanctions, of course. This is a CMA-controlled area, so the Controlled Magic Alliance does have jurisdiction here, so you're not going to be running around casting true necromancy or anything like that. However, those two very nice families have a very nice relationship with the Duke, who is real good friends with them and lets them do some fun stuff. So sometimes... let's just say you don't want to not be friends with them, or at least one of them. Yeah. In regards to like tourist attractions and stuff, there's a lot of stuff. The two fells have their own sorts of things. So like the Marion one, I mentioned the bathhouse, and there's also a really intricate sort of bar area that they own as well. That people like to go to for various reasons. And then the bathhouse is a little bit more complicated than normal bathhouse. It's in American custom, they sort of meld theaters and bathhouses, and the idea is that everyone is bathing in these sort of either large communal baths or like individual VIP kind of bath areas, and then the theater is like down range from that basically. So you can be bathing and then also watching a play, and you can hire a personal sort of bather to scrub you up and everything, and so it's a real great time. People love to go there. It's very ornate and beautiful, traditional Marian architecture. And then on the Stiltsguardian side of things, you've got the bank, which is this huge Gothic monolith that stands on top of the fell, and it's just like a gorgeous thing to look at if you want to ever see some like real crazy, grandiose architecture. And then they've also got the Crucible, which is the gladiatorial arena I aforementioned. And basically, it's run by the Mortcrier family, and it's just a real fun place to take the kids and watch some people, duke it out and settle their differences, like men and women who are really bloody and stab each other a lot. Other than that, there is the Duke's Spire, which is a marvel of architecture, massive spire that goes up higher than the two fells if you're looking at the maps that he made, and smaller than two fells if you're actually looking at the city. And it's just this gorgeous spiraling sort of architecture, very unique from anything else in the area. And it's like made of gold, but not really. It's complicated.
Who is the Duke?
Gregor Traus. The Duke is a really good guy who used to be a really bad guy, and now he's kind of cool.
I have some follow-up questions that kind of go along with my original thing. Is there any like well-known restaurants within there, or like anything that's like people go there to specifically go to? Maybe it's a crafter, or they go to this restaurant because there's a specific cuisine that maybe you can only find here in Griffondale. Also, when in terms of the Griffins, they're known for that. Is that on the outskirts of the city? Is that like, where would that be located? And what do those generally look like, if you don't mind getting into detail with that?
The first two parts of that question, yes, there are both very specific crafters who find their way to the city. It is the capital city of the state, so you do have a lot of people trying to come there. It's the largest city in the state because of that. You have a lot of people trying to come there to prove themselves worthy, to try and sort of court the Duke essentially, and try to gain some sort of favor from him or the nobles in order to get some patronage for their wares, as well as just generally trying to sell their stuff to the massive populace. It's also a river city, so you get a lot of traffic and stuff through there. So there's a lot of crafters in the Undercity. You see a lot of very unique different cultural stuff, because it's where, for a lot of people it's seen as the slums, but for the people who have to live there, it's just the world. It's just part of the city. And so there are still beautiful bazaars and little sort of tapestry stores, Darasani tapestry stores, where you might find like a Riani jeweler, or a some sort of less popular kind of smith down there, who might have some sort of like very specific manner by which they do things. And so all sorts of life exists down there, and all sorts of craft. And then above that, in the Duke's quarters, where the Duke actually pays very successful craftsmen to come and live in these houses and hawk their wares in order to basically bolster the economy of the city. And so some of these people might include, for example, the Von Rocht family, who creates bone servants, and that's not a very common craft that you would find.
It's the Scarlasian dream, per se, for me to come here and become a very successful cobbler in this city.
Just making shoes. Just making shoes in the city of dreams. Whoa. Yeah,
He has 4 other people to compete with.
4 other shoemakers, and they're all pretty good, too. We put a lot of work into those guys. But really, in the Duke's Quarter, you'll find all kinds of people who are doing all kinds of things, and they are the best at their craft, as far as the Duke is concerned. And then either fell also has their own share of, typically of their own race, sort of trying to accentuate and sort of present to the world their homeland's capabilities. But you'll see, like on the Stiltsguardian fell, you'll see a lot of Stiltsguardian craftsmen and stuff of very specific capabilities, in the sense that in the Crucible, while you also have all the fighting and stuff happening down below, up top on the highest levels, you have Mortcrier, the one of the nobles who runs the place, and essentially he hires or rents out rather stalls to the best of the best weapons and armor craftsmen, all from all around, and they'll come in and they'll make their stuff there specifically for champions and fighters in the arena. And so that's something that's a very big kind of attraction. And then on the Marienfell, you have a guy who actually makes robes and robi, which are essentially masks and traditional Marian robes. And so there's a beautiful, ornate, unique sort of craftsmanship that you're only going to get from that guy. there at, I believe it's Olivier's closet, if I'm remembering correctly.
Wait. Okay. You mentioned that there are weapons, and I'm just curious. I'm just real curious. Are there guns in Griffondale?
I can't run away this time. Yes. Tons of guns. Mostly in the Undercity. You get a bunch of really down on their luck, feeling real mageless humans, and they made a bunch of guns, and now they use them to kill a bunch of people who aren't mageless. It's real fun stuff down there. You should check it out.
You never answered my question on those griffins. What are you hiding?
I did not hear your question about the griffins.
I asked you where they're located, what they generally look like, how do they get their money, because, yeah, you sell to the military, but,
I mean, it's a shame, really. It's a very sad sort of reality of the world that most griffins, they just, these days they have to resort to doing things like selling their bodies, and that's how they get most of their money. But they're located, the farms are located in the Paradiso Valleys, which are basically further down the river from Griffondale, but still technically a part of the city. They are essentially these beautiful, it's more like the farmlands. They're these beautiful, it's a beautiful valley. It's a lush valley called Paradise that essentially is where you get all kinds of people growing all sorts of fruits and things. There's orchards and stuff like that, and spices and herbs that are grown there, as well as up on top of that on the mountains that sort of form the sides of that valley. Not the same as the fells that flank the city, but just parts of the Bloomspire Mountains further in the back. That's where you'll get a lot of the Griffin ranches, and they'll be set up sort of on the cliff sides, and you'll have fences, that are kind of lining those sides, and then you'll have sort of the farmer or the rancher's house up top, and they'll sort of climb down ladders or little rock stone sort of staircases to get down and tend to the griffins, and they'll train them and fly them around up top, and yeah, it's a crazy sight to see, honestly. And there are a few nobles who sort of oversee that whole operation for the Duke.
Wait, why are there fences if the griffins can just fly out?
Because not all griffins can fly at all times if their wings have been clipped for specific reasons, or if they're injured, or if they're young and they haven't flown yet. They don't want them to fall off the side of the cliff.
I don't need a griffin. I've got Bones. He's pretty
You
cool.
wanted a griffin? You told me you wanted a griffin.
Actually, I want a heart. I want that little boy's heart. And
Explain yourself.
Okay. Heart
You're not that kind of necromancer.
Okay, heart spelled HART. It's a mythical creature that people ride, and it's like a deer. Think of it like a type of deer that is mountable and very quick.
It's like the size of a horse.
And the Barrymores, they are a family that live in the Paradiso Valley outside of Griffondale, and they have racing hearts that they race. And this little boy, the little Barrymore boy, has one, and I want it. And I asked him if when it died, I could have it. And he told me, this little 9-year-old boy was like, we'll see if you're worthy. And I'm like, okay.
Looping back to the city, because we're a little off topic, but not completely. It was really good information, stuff that now we don't have to cover in another video. So now we'll take it from 300 to just 12. No, I was trying to see if it would fade out, but now I just reinvoked it. Shit. No. So my other question though is, what is the minority in Synestria, Griffondale, and what is the more prominent races and what does the minority look like? Like, where do they live? Stuff like that. Is there any very big discrimination that goes on within the city, like towards a certain group or, stuff like that?
Yeah, okay. So it's really interesting, right? Because the word minority doesn't necessarily apply here. In the whole world, these classes may be minorities. However, in Griffondale, they're kind of the majorities because they get stuck here in the Undercity, which the Duke's Quarter and the two fells are, 3 of the 4 sections of the city. The Undercity has 3 layers, each the size of the Duke's Quarter, and is the other section of the city. There's 4 total districts, and this is one of them. And so essentially the Undercity is 3 times the size of all three of the other districts, not combined, but individually. And that is where a large portion of these marginalized races end up. So mostly it's elves. Mostly it's Darasani and Riani. And the main reason is because back in the day when Scarlasia was originally founded, the Riani and the Darasani were who lived in Ronza. And they were essentially just completely given no quarter, pushed out or killed in order to make way for Duncan, the original guy who ran what eventually became Scarlasia, and his tribes. And so basically, in doing all of that, you marginalize and destroy a lot of people's culture, and so those people have to kind of figure something out. So some of them have ended up finding their own places. The Darasani have mostly moved north, and you find them in the Scorched Lands, and they're wanderers, nomads, so they're kind of all over the place. But the Riani, while they did live, some of them do still live in the south and hang out in sort of the tundras and the forests. A very large number of them, I wouldn't say a majority, but a very large number of them has found their way to the city and has attempted to basically try and civilize themselves and find some sort of future safety and security for their family moving forward by becoming a part of this society. And let's just say it hasn't worked out too well. Strauss, actually, the current Duke of Griffondale, was the one who sort of headed this operation to found and settle Griffondale by basically pushing the Riani down into the forests, which are now named for him, the Gregor's Gate Wildlands, where the wild Riani now live, that he pushed them back into. So there's a lot of history with all of this, and you'll see it. People who are on both sides of the war, who have both sides of the belief systems, and some people who are trying to meld it or just believe that it's not relevant anymore. And so there's a lot of reality to it and a lot of complexity that I think will be explored in a very interesting way within the show.
But is there any defining event that really helped shape the city to what it is today? Stuff that the general public would know about it, where they start as just farmers or anything, anything that's really built them to be what they are today, the capital they are today. That's general knowledge. Could even be a secret, or something that's a known secret that's not really spoken. Just anything like that. I'm really curious.
Yeah, hell, that's a good question. I wasn't expecting that at all. There's a lot of things that have happened, and I don't want to give too many specifics because we'd be here forever just talking about the history. To answer the second part of that, the basic idea of what Griffondale was upon founding was two things. One, the Bloomspire mountain range cuts right through the eastern side, I believe, of Astalia, and that borders Kulmanahar, which is essentially where the orcs live. It's the orc nation. Orcs are scary. Currently, it's not nice to say that, but back in the day, when it was just you and your farmer friends, and then 8-foot green dudes in big magic armor with massive swords coming to raid your village, they were scary. So Griffondale was originally established as, I wouldn't call it a fort because it was still a settlement, but there was a lot of military presence there. And the main idea was they were going to breed these griffins in order to have an advantage over the orcs. So the orcs don't really, they have a lot of land creatures that they use for mounts and stuff, but they don't have a lot of, I don't think they have any actually, if I can think of anything, flying creatures. So it added this new sort of level to the battle that allowed them to really do a lot more sort of we're just going to take a griffin up, scout around, make sure there's not any orc patrols on the mountains or anything like that. And that's not something you could do on foot. So that was the main sort of basis of the town way back, ages ago. But now, in terms of how it became established more prominently in any sort of big events that happened,
Oh, I was just on the river.
Oh, yeah. The main thing I was going to say is that it became a trade city. And it was not the original capital of Astalia. The original capital was destroyed in the Midnight War at the end of First Age. It was a place that everyone retreated to when they were fighting off Kerr or rather the Cult of Midnight and the Demon armies. And essentially, it got destroyed and overrun during that fight. And we might end up doing something with that story at some point. The main capital that was created afterwards was Griffondale. And two very nice benefactors from two previously previously warring nations that just sort of all of a sudden had some sort of agreement with each other came to the city almost at the same time. It was very convenient, and spoke to the Duke before Gregor in order to essentially establish this trifecta, basically, between their two very prominent noble families who are capable of putting a lot of money towards the creation and upkeep of this city, and his, dukeship, literally the rank below the sovereign. So, big deal. And they all came together to build the city and fortify it in such a way that it could be used as a new capital and be capable of protecting itself, but also generating economy and traffic and managing the river itself and all of that. The Stilts Guardians have helped a lot with the infrastructure of the city, while the Amarians have helped a lot with the image of the city. So those two things, along with the Duke itself, and now Docker, who runs the docks and is actually the leader of the Undercity, are able to sort of keep all of these very intricate pieces and very different pieces of Griffondale together. And then between that and the military contract they have for basically creating all of the military's griffins, they're doing pretty well.
So my final question is, are there any prominent guilds that operate out of the city? I mean, it is a capital. Would it be like the Cobblers Guild? It can be low-tier stuff, or it can be... I was very serious.
Are you gonna work cobblers into every question? I'm surprised you didn't ask if the Griffins and Griffins.
Well, do they wear shoes? Do they? I mean, shit. I mean,
no, there are no Griffins.
I'm just the guy on the hustle, man. I'm just the guy on the hustle.
No, they got lion paws, man. They don't need shoes.
But yeah, so is there any prominent guilds that do operate out of there? I'm very curious, just within the state as a whole, so,
Yeah, no, that is a fantastic question. Okay, so guilds are a little complicated because we're moving out of First Stage, which is the Age of Thrones. We're talking medieval sort of analogies into Elizabethan era. So basically, we're not really dealing with guilds anymore because guilds were about nobles have a bunch of money and they regulate how trade works in their domain. We're not really doing that anymore. Nobles still regulate their own investments and stuff, but those are their industries. That's what they're doing for their estate. They don't really have a say over like any old cobbler walking through the street, right? Just because they have a big cobbler thing doesn't mean they can say you can't cobble. It just means they manage their work. Separate from that, you do still have guilds that exist, but they're not really sanctioned, or rather, they're not really operated or beholden to the sovereign or the duke. They stand more as individual units these days and are converting to something that you would more see like a union. So they're basically individually, privately owned. In most cases, they're benevolent. In most cases, they're not trying to just manufacture profit. Instead, they're usually trying to protect the welfare of not necessarily the people, but the industry, whatever it is. Yeah, and then as far as in Griffondale, the Adventurers Guild, the South Scarlasian Adventurers Guild, also known as the Lodge, is in the Undercity of Griffondale. There is a North Scarlasian Adventurers Guild that is in Volna, the capital, but the South Scarlasian Adventurers Guild cuts it right in half, deals with all the stuff in the south, frozen monsters and stuff. Those guys are actually in Griffondale. Other than that, there are no other guild halls.
Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for our Griffondale video. If you guys have any questions about Griffondale, if anything wasn't clear, you can go ahead and comment it down below, and we will answer any and all questions you have, as long as it doesn't...
Well, yeah, maybe not all questions.
No.
Don't leave it in the comments because we won't answer it, because instead you can go to www.joinourpatreon.com, donate $1, and we may or may not answer your question.
You can leave questions in the comments too, but we also would really appreciate your Patreon subscriptions because I don't like ramen that much.
Yeah, leave your comments down below. If you want to leave your comments on our Patreon, a lot of the information that we've talked about today you can actually find on our Patreon for just donating on our $1 tier. And you get immediate access to all of those PDFs that I painstakingly formatted. So yeah, any questions, comments, concerns, go leave them down below. Like our video if you like our content. Watch our Twitch stream, which if you follow us on our social medias, those will be linked down below. You will get constant updates. We don't know exactly we're going to start our Twitch stream because we want to make sure we're getting through all the videos and everything's prepped and ready. But once we do figure out a streaming date, it will be posted on all our socials. So you can check literally all of that out down in the description. Everything you need will be down there. And while you're thinking about Griffondale and reading through all those PDFs, get excited for our next video because they're going to be one-on-one prologues with me and Rios. And you're going to get to learn a lot of backstory about our characters before going into the Twitch stream because our characters are starting at level 5. And that means that, you know, we've already done some stuff. So if you want some context before you jump into the stream, you're going to want to watch those because it's going to explain a lot about who we are. And it's going to give us as a chance as players to tell you guys who our characters are. That's it. That's all.
Yeah, they're also going to be pretty lit.
They're going to be so lit because I technically have 3 characters. What? What? No, I'm just kidding. I have 1 character. She has 2 servants. It's great.
He has like 7 characters, though. Just kidding. They're all cobblers.
There's just shoes. Just pairs of shoes that he's named.
Yeah, he's just named all of his shoes.
My profession changes depending on the shoes I wear.
Ooh, that's like...
A man of many shoes.